Have you ever looked at an old photo and shivered? Not because it was scary, but because you felt something was silently watching from the other side of the frame. In this series, we will step into stories where smiles turn into farewells, where light is just a cover for terrible darkness. Each photo, each moment, each memory will lead you deeper into a world where death lurks in the midst of peace. And when you realize the truth, it may be too late to turn back. If you are brave enough to face what awaits in the darkness, click subscribe now. Click like if you have ever felt a chill down your spine when looking at a seemingly normal photo, and share this video with your friends who dare to walk with you down to where the last light has died. Are you ready? Here we go. Part 1. Moments near death. When peace is just an illusion. There are moments in life that seem so peaceful that you believe you are absolutely safe. A smile, a peaceful scene, a bit of arrogance before nature. But then, in just a split second, everything disappears, and what remains is only a deadly silence. We begin this journey from where the last photos still linger, a look, a smile, but behind it, death is quietly approaching. H.R. Truman, the mountain watcher and death sentence from the underground H.R. Truman, a rebellious old man with messy silver hair and indifferent dark blue eyes, is the owner of Mount St. Helens Lodge, a small lodge on the shore of Spirit Lake, located right at the foot of Mount St. Helens volcano. In 1980, when the mountain began to rumble, shaking like a monster awakening, geologists came out, holding up warning signs and pleading with the people to leave. But Truman just smirked. He declared bluntly to the cameras, "If that devil explodes, I'll explode with it." And he kept his word. On May 18, 1980 at dawn, Mount St. Helens roared like a piercing scream. The entire north face of the mountain collapsed, releasing a torrent of ash, toxic gas, and hot rock that shot at 600 kilometers per hour. A torrent of inferno-like gas swept across Spirit Lake. Truman's house, his 16 cats, and himself, all were buried under more than 150 feet of hot ash. Not a trace, not a grave. The last photos show Truman standing in the doorway of his house, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking up at the mountaintop without fear. Perhaps deep down, Truman knew he would become part of the legend, or part of the mountain itself. Aaron Dwanke, The Never-Ending Adventure. On December 27, 2022, Aaron Dwanke, a seasoned adventurer, sent his family an energetic selfie. He was standing on a thin layer of ice across the half-frozen Missouri River, his confident smile, his eyes burning with fearlessness. Just a few hours later, Aaron disappeared. Police said he had skated across the river to the rendezvous point. His family, accustomed to Aaron's crazy adventures, didn't care much. But when night fell, the phone was still off. The next day, there was still no text message. And then, a week later, as search teams along the frozen Missouri River retreated, the chills seeped into everyone's hearts. Aaron had vanished as if he had never existed. That last photo, a smile so full of life, now hangs in his living room, colder and more painful than the winter. The flood that swept away hope, the Turner family tragedy, Hurricane Helen of 2022, sent floodwaters surging across the southeast. In the chaos, one photo became the most heartbreaking symbol. Jessica Dry Turner posted a photo on Facebook. Her parents and her young nephew standing on the roof of their house, clinging to each other in the vast sea of water. They were smiling, trying to look optimistic. An 18-wheeler passed them like a toy boat. Jessica wrote, "My parents don't need to be rescued right now. Save them for those who need it more." But just hours later, she updated her status. They didn't make it. The rushing water swept away the roof. Her parents and baby niece drowned. Only her sister Megan was lucky to survive, trapped in the rubble. The photos, initially hopeful, now turned into a nightmare. Jessica confessed, "I still wait for my mom's call every day." That hopeless expectation, repeated forever, like the waves crashing on the shore that never stop. Austin Howell, Smile Before the Pit of Death. Austin Howell is not simply a climber. He is a freedom fighter who challenges death every second and minute. Despite many near-fatal accidents, broken skulls, broken necks, fractured spines, Austin continues to fly on vertical cliffs without a safety rope. On June 30th, 2019, Austin chose Shortoff Mountain, one of North Carolina's most rugged locations, as his next destination. The final photos captured Austin hangs from the cliff, smiling brightly as if defeating fate is a small matter. The wind blows his hair, the sun shines on his shoulders. A beautiful moment like poetry. But then, a scream rips through the air. No! And then silence. Witnesses say, that scream was not of fear. It was of despair, of the realization that he could not escape. A rock bolt broke under his hand, and Austin fell from a height of 80 feet. Death came as quickly as the blink of an eye. His body was found, lying motionless, on the cold stone floor. A smile still lingered at the corner of his mouth, as if Austin had known and accepted this outcome from the beginning of the trip. The general picture, peace, the most fragile illusion. Truman stands before the volcano, defying death. Aaron skates on the seemingly motionless river. The Turner family waves for help in the middle of the gentle sea. Austin laughs in defiance of gravity. They all believe, at the last moment, that they still have time, that the wall between life and death is still thick, but reality is unforgiving. A small crack in the ground, a slip on the ice, a sudden flood, a broken stone bolt, and the world full of light falls straight into eternal darkness. Do you hear? If you look closely at these late photographs, you may notice one thing. There is always something strange in the light, in the way the characters laugh, in the unnatural silence of the scene. A premonition, a whisper in the wind, or just the warped imagination of the survivors. Either way, from the moment the photograph is taken, the clock begins to count down, silently, mercilessly. And next time you smile into a camera, ask yourself, is this your last smile? Part 2, When Hope is Stolen, a smile that dies in an instant. Sometimes what seems to comfort us is actually a double-edged sword that ends our souls. A gentle gaze, a tight embrace. These things are supposed to be symbols of love and faith, but when the naked truth is revealed, all that remains is a heavy void between the last two breaths. The photo we see today, beautiful moments that seem so ordinary, is horrifying evidence that sometimes death is always standing at the edge of the frame, just waiting for a second of inattention to swallow all hope. Pulitzer Prize-winning photo, Immortal Pain on the Beach. Hermosa Beach, California. Gentle waves lapping the shore, a gentle breeze blowing, and against the blue sky, a young couple embracing. At first glance, the photo captured by photographer John Gaunt appears to be a simple epitome of love. But in reality, it is a moment of hell on earth. Minutes before the camera clicked, their 19-month-old son, Michael, had disappeared from their yard. His baby steps followed the white sand path, and then straight into the cold embrace of the ocean. When Michael's parents realized there were only tiny footprints left on the sand, fading into the water, they screamed, searched, waded into the cold water, to no avail. The sea just smiled, carrying the child away like a tiny star. John Gaunt knew nothing of the tragedy. He only saw the couple standing hugging each other, trembling as if about to break, and clicked the shutter. That damned camera had frozen the most heartbreaking moment of their lives, a moment that no words could soothe. The photo later won a Pulitzer Prize, but for Michael's parents, it would forever be a nightmare. Duck Crossing, the death of a good father. On May 22, 2023, the California sky was clear, and the traffic on Stanford Ranch Boulevard was as busy as ever. Casey Rivera was on his way to pick up his two children from swimming class. In the back seat, the children's laughter rang out. When he saw a flock of mother ducks and ducklings struggling on the side of the road, Casey immediately stopped the car. He stepped out, waving for the little creatures to pass. The children in the car turned on their phones, proudly recording the image of their heroic father. As Casey safely brought the ducks across the lawn, he turned around, his smile not yet fully on his lips. The screech of tires, the clang of metal. And then, dead silence. A car, traveling at a terrifying speed, hit Casey as he was returning to his car. Before the eyes of his children, before the eyes of those who had applauded him just seconds before, Casey Rivera fell, never to rise again. The last video the two children recorded was not of a hero returning, but of the moment their father collapsed to the ground, leaving them behind forever. Brian Pata, the betrayed hero. Brian Pata, the star player of the Miami Hurricanes, had no idea that his last game would not be on the field. On November 7, 2006, after a normal practice, Brian returned home as usual. His car glided smoothly into the golden afternoon. Only a few steps to the door of the house, a shot rang out, and Brian collapsed. Blood splattered across the front yard. No witnesses, no security cameras. The police found only a talented young man lying there, eyes still wide open, not yet understanding what had happened. Years passed, Brian's death became a heartbreaking mystery. It wasn't until 2021 that the killer was revealed, a twist that stunned the entire football community. Rashawn Jones, a close teammate who had knelt and sobbed at Brian's memorial, was the one who pulled the trigger. Anger, betrayal. Blood was spilled right under the helmets wearing the same color. And in that photo, the killer was still laughing and crying next to the victim's gravestone, as if he were innocent. Granite Mountain Hotshots, the firefighters who never returned. They are the soldiers of the fire, the Granite Mountain Hotshots, Arizona's most elite firefighting team. On June 30th, 2013, they went out to battle as they always did, facing the Yarnell Hill fire. The last photo shows 19 young, healthy men standing under a dead tree, smiling brightly as if nothing could touch them. But then, a gust of wind changed direction. A new path of fire opened up, blocking the last escape route. The hotshots tried to build a fireproof tent, their last weapon against death. But the temperature outside was over 1,000 degrees Celsius, an inferno that no one could stop. When their teammates found them after the fire, all they had left were black shadows under the wrinkled tent. Only one survived, because he had been assigned to be a remote observer that day. And the last photo, those bright smiles, became the most tragic legacy of those who never returned. Omagh bombing, family on the edge of death. On August 15, 1998, in the town of Omagh, Northern Ireland, the festive atmosphere was everywhere. A father and daughter took a souvenir photo next to a red car parked on the side of the road. Their smiles were as bright as the endless summer. No one noticed that the car contained more than 200 kilograms of explosives planted by the real IRA. The warning to the police was miscommunicated. Instead of evacuating people from the area, they accidentally gathered the crowd right where the bomb was waiting to explode. The moment of horror came. The explosion tore through the space. The destructive force blew the bustling street into bloody ruins. Dozens of lives were wiped out in an instant. The father and daughter in the photo miraculously survived, but the memories of blood, hunger, and screams still haunt them forever. The photo became evidence by accident, a moment of peace, just one breath away from hell. The whisper of death. If you think these photos simply capture a moment, think again. Hidden deep within each of these images are silent deaths, dull pains, wordless screams. The eyes in the photos seem to be dreaming, but in fact, they are just deceiving themselves. All of them have no idea. They have come closer to the edge of the abyss than anyone realizes. Can you hear it? Behind the smile, behind the sunlight, behind a beautiful act, there is the silent shadow of fate waiting. And when you look at an ordinary photo again, ask yourself, is there someone in it who never came back? Part 3. When horror hides behind a smile. A beautiful photo can tell a story or hide a nightmare. There are moments when people think they are immortal, standing on the edge of Niagara Falls, wearing Spider-Man costumes and running freely in their backyards, or holding hands and taking pictures on a peaceful afternoon. But those moments are just a fragile cover, allowing death to quietly creep in. Then, when the photo freezes that smile forever, behind it is a terrifying void that no one can foresee. Ayano Tokumasu, The Girl and the Invisible Brink. It was a bright day at Niagara Falls. The sound of the water crashing down was like thousands of overlapping thunderclaps. The ground shook gently underfoot. People were laughing, posing, and lining up to take pictures. In the crowd, Ayano Tokumasu, a 20-year-old Japanese girl, stood out with a bright smile, her hand loosely holding onto the railing along the falls. No one noticed that she was leaning too far. No one screamed as the wind blew her hair back, pulling her shirt like a kite. No one saw that just below the metal barrier. The water was more than just strong. It was like a monster with its mouth open, waiting. And then, a short slide. A sound like someone grabbed a curtain and ripped it open. She was gone. No one could save her. No miracle was performed. Ayano's body was found a few days later, floating at the foot of the falls like a tattered leaf. The last remaining photo, Ayano, head tilted and smiling, halfway between heaven and hell, a moment of innocence that would turn tragic in seconds. William Tyrrell, the superhero swallowed by darkness. A small town, a cool spring morning, William Tyrrell, just 3 years old, wearing a bright red Spider-Man costume, skipping past Grandma's yard. His foster mother had just caught the moment William bared his teeth and growled, pretending to be a superhero about to storm the world. And then, the mother turned away to make tea. When she returned, the yard was empty. Only the wind blew gently on the grass. Called hoarsely, searched in vain. William did not answer. Not a sound, not a clue. Only the photo of the boy in the Spider-Man costume, smiling innocently in the sunlight, remained. Years passed, and the only thing people knew was William disappeared forever, as if the boy himself, in the superhero costume, had stepped through an invisible door, into a world where no one could save him. Jane Doe, Ghost in the Woods. If there is one image that is most chilling, it is this blurry clip from a North Carolina hunting camera. A woman staggers, her hair matted by the night dew, her eyes empty, holding a branch in her hand like a desperate weapon. At first, people thought she was lost. Then when she reappears, her gait more unsteady, her eyes lost between two worlds, a shiver creeps up every cranny of her spine. No one can find her. Until a few months later, hunters discover her rotting remains in the woods, along with a patchy backpack. No ID, no identity. Only the brief images remain, like a ghostly reminder. Among those dark trees, there are souls dying the world has never known. Brendan Vega and Sailor Gills, The Road to Never Return. They were two young friends, full of energy. One afternoon in March, they climbed the cold spring trail together, a seemingly safe trail. But as the sun set behind the mountains, the cold set in. Fog obscured their steps. The familiar path turned into a maze of death. Sailor slipped first, the sound of a broken bone echoing like a cold slash in the dark night. She lay there, her ankles twisted. Brendan, his hands bleeding, tried to carry his friend on his back, but the seriousness of his injuries forced him to make a cruel decision. "I'll go back to the car and call for help. Don't be afraid, stay here." That was the last time Sailor heard Brendan's voice. When the rescue team found Sailor the next morning, she was curled up, her red hair like a small flame, flickering in the mist. Brendan was no more. He fell off a cliff while trying to find his way back. The last photo of them, smiling together before the trip. Now only the smile of the survivor remains, and the eternal silence of the one who has gone. Eric and Samantha, the wedding car ride to hell. The wedding, champagne, laughter, cheerful well wishes. Eric and Samantha, hand in hand, climbed into the small golf cart, the just married sign swinging behind them like a final happy note. They kissed under the golden sunset. The cart rolled smoothly down the road home. Then, like a knife cutting through a love song, a car driven by a drunk driver came crashing through. The sound of metal shattering, screams, then silence. Samantha, still in her wedding dress, collapsed dead on the spot. Eric survived, but his body and heart were broken beyond repair. Their last photo, their eyes, their smiles, their pure love, became a relic of the happiest and most tragic day of their lives. When peace is just a trap of fate. If you ever thought that the best moments would last forever, remember Ayano, William, the nameless woman, Brendan, Samantha. They also believed that they had their whole lives ahead of them. But in the last photo, hidden behind that warm light, there is always a shadow, a cold hand slowly closing, a slight nod of fate, a misstep between two breaths, an invisible crack under the feet of those who thought they were immortal. And sometimes all it takes is a photo to remind us that peace is not always real. Part 4. When faith collapses and death waits in the blind spot. Faith is the most fragile thing in this world. It gives us the courage to move forward, even though every step brings us closer to the abyss. When you believe that everything will be okay, that someone will protect you, that disaster cannot come to you, that is also the moment when fate, from the darkness, quietly tightens the invisible rope around your neck. And when the truth is revealed, all hopes, all dreams turn to ashes. Tyre Sampson, the fall that was never warned. That day at Icon Park, Orlando, the sun was brighter than ever. The crowd cheered at the foot of the towering rides. Tyre Sampson, a 14-year-old boy with an outstanding body, eagerly lined up with his friends to wait his turn. When they arrived at the freefall tower, the tallest freefall tower in the world, everyone knew he was too big to fit into the safety seat. But the operator, out of carelessness or out of habit, dismissed all warnings. The safety seat was flashing red, a warning that it was not secured, but no one stopped. As the tower lifted Tyre to a height of more than 400 feet, the world below him shrank to a tiny dot. The cold wind cut through the laughter. When the tower dropped, all the passengers screamed with pleasure. Only Tyre in that moment was thrown from his seat, a giant body falling freely through the air under the horrified gaze of his closest friends. The sound of the fall, heavy, deafening, tore through the air. No one had time to react. No cry for help. Only a silence colder than the sky at that moment. The last photo of Tyre, sitting sideways in his seat, his eyes unable to hide his anxiety, was more haunting than any narrative. The fear was there in his forced smile. But no one noticed until it was too late. Christopher McCandless, The Journey to Freedom and Death in the Sun. Christopher McCandless did not want to live in the stuffy city. He gave up everything, family, friends, money, to step into the Alaskan wilderness where he believed nature would save his soul. He set up camp in an abandoned Bus 142, and lived on what nature gave him. At first, everything was beautiful. Chris fished, hunted rabbits, and recorded in his diary the days filled with freedom. But nature was not the forgiving mother, he thought. As winter melted, hunger began to take hold. Chris mistakenly ate a poisonous tree seed, a small but fatal mistake. He recorded in his diary the days when his body was exhausted, his legs were shaking, and he could no longer stand up. The light in his eyes gradually dimmed. In the last photo, Chris was emaciated, sitting in front of the bus door, raising his hand to wave to the camera as if to say goodbye to the world. A scrawled line next to it, "I had a happy life. Goodbye." No one heard the silent cry for help in that photo. No one came. Only the wind blew through the rotten bus window, singing a final song for a dreamer who died for his naive beliefs. Samra Isel, Tragic Ending Under the Cliff, Butterfly Valley, Turkey. A vertical cliff embracing a blue beach like a pearl. Samra Isel, a 32-year-old woman, 7 months pregnant, and her husband enjoyed their dream vacation. In the last photo, Samra sat near the edge of the cliff, her hair flying, her arms hugging her pregnant belly, her eyes sparkling with happiness. None of the people standing nearby knew that in a few seconds, that smile would fade forever. Suddenly Hakan, her husband, approached. A gentle push, enough to break the fragile balance. Samra fell 1,000 feet, her body hitting the jagged rocks until she disappeared into the mist. Hakan pretended to cry, pretended to be in pain. But when the police investigated, the truth came out. He had taken out a huge life insurance policy on his wife just before the trip. Samra believed she was loved, but the man holding her hand on the edge only thought about money. The last photo, a sparkling smile on the edge of death, sent chills down the spine of anyone who looked at it. Bart Whitaker, When Family Becomes a Death Trap. The Whitaker family had no idea that their beloved son's graduation party, Bart, would be their last table. Bart's father, mother, and younger brother all loved him and were proud of him. The photo of the four of them at the restaurant, Bart smiling brightly, his glass of wine raised high, radiated pure happiness. But after dinner, as the car pulled up to the house, the bullets were waiting. Bart's mother and brother died on the front steps. The father miraculously survived several surgeries. The truth was horrifying. Bart himself, the son they had cherished all his life, had hired a hitman to kill his family and take their fortune. In the final photo, Bart stands next to the people he was about to send to hell, smiling, and the world, with all its beauty and trust, in that moment, collapsed. When hope is also nailed to darkness. Tyre thought the staff would check for safety. Chris thought nature would forgive. Samra thought love would save her. The Whitakers thought pride would be rewarded. They were all wrong. Some slips can never be recovered. There are hands that reach out not to pull you up, but to push you down. There are smiles that are just the last mask before hell swallows you up. The next time you look at a photo filled with happiness, ask yourself, is that the last moment before their world falls apart? Part 5. The Last Smiles, and the Darkness Never Lets Go. There are evenings that seem normal. There are photos filled with laughter, but just one click, just one careless moment, can freeze that last moment of happiness before darkness swallows it all. Go deeper to where memories begin to crack. Brittany Gargle, The Accused Selfie. An ordinary night in Saskatoon, Canada. Brittany Gargle, 18, and her best friend Cheyenne Rose Antoine decide to go to a bar for a drink, to let loose. Before, as they left the apartment, the two took a selfie. Brittany smiling, Cheyenne holding her close, her eyes shining in the party. No one expected that it would be the last photo of Brittany alive. The next morning, Brittany's body was found on the side of the road with a belt tightly around her neck. The police searched for clues until they saw the selfie. The belt Cheyenne wore in the photo, the color, the style, matched the murder weapon perfectly. Cheyenne initially denied it, but the evidence was undeniable. She confessed. In a drunken rage because of a vague argument, she strangled her best friend to death. Death was silent in the darkness, as silent as the laughter that had rung out loudly just a few hours before. Anne Faber, The Last Smile in the Rain. A drizzly day in Utrecht, Netherlands. Anne Faber, 25, decided to go for a bike ride, despite the gloomy weather. She sent her boyfriend a selfie. Her hair was disheveled by the rain, her eyes sparkling, teasing fate. "Rainy but still happy," she texted. Then Anne disappeared. The whole country was in chaos, searching for her. Thousands of people poured into the fields and forests, but the cruel truth waited for no one. Anne was kidnapped, raped, and murdered by Michael Panhoose, a sex offender who had escaped from a mental hospital. Her body was found in a shallow grave in a wet field. Anne's last selfie, a lively smile in the rain, became a false curtain covering the terrifying death that was approaching. Aurora theater shooting. When the ghost puts on a superhero's cloak on July 20th, 2012, in Aurora, Colorado, the screening of The Dark Knight Rises was packed. The excitement filled the theater. Among the eager audience, no one paid attention to a man with fiery orange hair, James Holmes. Hours earlier, James had taken a series of 6 selfies. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, holding a gun, smirking like a man about to go on a rampage. As the movie began, the lights dimmed. James opened the emergency exit, entered the theater with full weapons. He opened fire on the chaotic crowd. 13 people were killed. 70 others were injured. The initial echoes of laughter were replaced by screams, bullets piercing flesh, and the sound of footsteps trampling each other in despair. The selfie he took before the massacre, with his empty eyes, his crooked smile, became a chilling testament to a real-life, hellish night. Ronaldo Dagsa, when the killer appears right in the photo. On New Year's Eve 2011, Ronaldo Dagsa, a famous politician in the Philippines, decided to take a photo of his family standing in front of his beloved house. Everyone smiled, fireworks sparkled behind. But when the photo was developed, everyone was stunned. In the corner of the photo, right behind the family, a man holding a gun silently aimed straight at Ronaldo. Moments after pressing the shutter, Ronaldo was shot in the chest, collapsing in the arms of his wife and children. The photo, both the last legacy and the evidence to arrest the killer, revealed the truth that, even in the happiest moments, death can still put a gun to our backs. Red Lake Suitcase, the mystery of blood in the Red Lake. Sarah Funks, a travel vlogger, visited Red Lake in Cyprus in 2017. She filmed videos, took photos, and laughed happily next to the strange Red Lake. A shot shows something floating on the lake, a log-like object wrapped in dark cloth. Sarah, unsuspecting, continues her journey. 2 years later, the bodies of a series of female victims are discovered in suitcases dropped into the lake. The killer, a military officer who murdered them and threw them into the water like trash. The object Sarah accidentally recorded on the video was a suitcase containing the corpses. She didn't know. No one knew. Only the lake was red as blood, silently swallowing everything. When every smile turns into a death, Brittany didn't know that her best friend would strangle her after a night of partying. Anne didn't know that the wind and rain that day were a call from hell. Aurora viewers didn't know that the killer was sitting right next to them. Ronaldo didn't know that the camera recorded the moment of death. Sarah didn't know that the smile by the lake was the door to crime. They all believed that it was just another day. They were all wrong. There are shadows that cannot be seen. There are traps that make no sound. There are gunshots, screams, whispers in the wind that we only realize we heard when it is too late. And the photo, the selfie, the photo that captures the moment, is just an open coffin waiting to close after the last smile. Part 6. When the last light is extinguished. There are photos you want to keep forever. There are smiles you believe will never fade. But sometimes those very moments, the very moment when you think you are safest, are the beginning of a nightmare that has no end. Welcome to the lower levels where all faith is burned away. Bruce MacArthur, Bloody Santa Claus, Toronto, a city filled with Christmas lights. Children eagerly line up to take pictures with Santa Claus. Everyone loves Bruce MacArthur, a kind old man with a silver beard, kind eyes, and a warm smile. No one knows that after each holiday season, Bruce returns to his cramped apartment, opens the photos of his dead victims. For 7 years, Bruce hunts down single men in the LGBTQ+ community, brings them home, strangles them, and takes photos of their corpses as a trophy collection. He hides their bodies under flower beds, green graves right in the middle of the bright city. The children who once sat on Santa Claus's lap never knew that. Just a few steps behind them are rotting corpses. Perhaps, if they had known, they would never have laughed again. Tyler Hadley, bloody party at my house, Port St. Lucie, Florida. It was a hot July night. Tyler Hadley, 17, posted, "Party at my house tonight. My parents are gone." He invited over 60 friends, the music was playing, the glasses overflowed, and laughter filled the living room. There was only one room with the door closed. Behind that door, Tyler's parents, beaten to death by their own son with a hammer, their bodies wrapped in sheets and hastily thrown under a pile of blankets and pillows. All night long, Tyler's friends danced right above the makeshift grave, unaware. Someone smelled something strange. Someone asked, "Where are your parents?" Tyler just smiled and took selfies, his eyes pale, his smile twisted like someone who had been lost forever. When the police arrived the next morning, the concert had turned into the scene of the year's most chilling massacre. Jesse Lewis, the child between life and death. December 14, 2012. Early in the morning at Sandy Hook Elementary School, 6-year-old Jesse Lewis ran around, waving goodbye to his mother. The last photo of him that day still shows a bright light in his eyes. But less than 3 hours later, Adam Lanza walked into the school, gun in hand, coldly shooting down anyone in sight. In the midst of the panic, as the gunman reloaded, Jesse yelled to his friends, "Run! Hurry!" 9 children survived. Jesse did not. He died immediately after screaming for help, leaving a void that will never be filled. Jesse's final smile now echoes only in the blood-stained walls of the small school. Myra Hindley. When the Green Grass Hides Hell, England, 1960s. Myra Hindley and Ian Brady, a pair of monsters, kidnap and kill innocent children, then bury their bodies on the moors. One of the most famous photos. Myra stands smiling, holding her dog's leash, with a green lawn behind her. But the bloody truth lies just beneath her feet. Underneath that grass, just a few steps away, lies the body of John Kilbride, a 12-year-old boy, tortured to death. Myra's smile, her distant gaze, seemingly innocent, is actually the look of triumph after burying an innocent life. Sometimes hell isn't noisy or full of fire. It's just quiet, spread out under a green lawn, and waiting for someone else to step on it. Shania Davis, selling a child to the darkness. Fayetteville, North Carolina. Shania Davis, a 5-year-old girl, left her home in a white nightgown, her hair tied back, her eyes sparkling with confusion. The hotel security camera captured her last image, being carried by a strange man, entering a rented room by the hour. The man, later investigated, had bought Shania from her own mother to pay off a drug debt. A few days later, Shania's tiny body was found on the side of a deserted road. The last photo recorded, her eyes wide open in innocence, her arms hanging helplessly, became a dagger in the heart of humanity, a child sold by the person she called Mom. When there's no one left to trust, did you ever believe that Christmas lights would protect children from evil? Did you ever believe that teenage parties were harmless? Did you ever believe that school was a safe place? Did you ever believe that a smile on a field of grass was a symbol of freedom? Did you ever believe that your mother was the last safe haven? You were wrong. Bruce MacArthur, Tyler Hadley, Myra Hindley, the trafficker Shania, they all stepped out of those rosy paintings carrying cold scythes. And when the truth is revealed, we are left with only one cold question. Since when did light become a killer? Part 7. Where the light dies and memories are swallowed. There are places where even death does not want to leave a trace. There are moments when the silence is so deep that the sound of a heartbeat turns into a meaningless cry for help. And on this final level, the photos, the laughter, the promises, all have turned to ashes. Only darkness remains and nameless horror. Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès, the father and the buried verdict in his garden Nantes, France. The Dupont de Ligonnès family was once the ideal model. The calm father, the gentle mother G, 4 obedient children. Then one day they disappeared. Neighbors only remember that that night, the house suddenly became dark for many days. When the police broke in, they found in the garden shallow graves, piled on top of each other. The whole family, including both dogs, were killed, wrapped in blankets, sprinkled with lime powder, hastily covered with dirt. And Xavier, when the father, the breadwinner, disappeared without a trace. No one knows if he is dead or still hiding somewhere, waiting to return. The smiling family photo, the smile shining brightly in the garden sunlight, now remains only as a gruesome reminder. Sometimes the person who kills you is sitting right next to you and loves you more than anyone else. Elisa Lam, The Mystery of the Cecil Hotel Elevator. Los Angeles, 2013. Elisa Lam, a young college student, checks into the Cecil Hotel, which has been the scene of dozens of suicides and murders. The day she disappeared, security cameras captured strange images. Elisa standing in the elevator, pressing buttons repeatedly, huddled in corners, talking to someone invisible. Then she disappeared. The following week, Elisa's body was found in a water tank on the hotel's rooftop. The water was murky and smelled foul. Guests complained that the water tasted strange before the story broke. To this day, no one knows if Elisa committed suicide, was murdered, or was taken away by something. Only the final video, Elisa flinching, moving strangely, her eyes filled with fear, survives as a warning. Some things, once you open the door to them, they never leave. Skylar Neese, The Knife-Wielding Friend, West Virginia, 2012. Skylar Neese, 16, was invited by two close friends to go out for a midnight date. She jumped into the car with a bright smile, not a trace of suspicion. But just a few minutes later, at the edge of the woods, the two friends, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf, simultaneously pulled out knives and stabbed Skylar 50 times. When she was arrested, Rachel said, "We killed Skylar just because we didn't like her anymore." A life erased for such a vague reason. The last photo Skylar took with them, the three girls hugging and smiling, now looks like a poster for a horror movie. James Bulger, Little Hands Led to Death, Liverpool, 1993. James Bulger, a 3-year-old boy, was kidnapped from a supermarket. His mother turned her back for just a few seconds. Security cameras recorded James walking hand in hand, following two boys a few years older, Robert Thompson and John Venables. They led James across half the city, past countless indifferent people, to an abandoned railway line. There, the two children tortured James, beat him, threw rocks, stuffed batteries into his mouth, before letting James be crushed by a train. The whole of Britain was engulfed in cold anger, and the photo of little James, his eyes wide open as if asking, "Why?" became an eternal curse for those who believe that children should always be protected. Kurim Case, The Cameras of Hell, Czech Republic, 2007. Anna and Andrei Maurova, members of an evil cult, install surveillance cameras in their home to monitor the two children they are raising. What the cameras record makes even the police sick. They see children tied with ropes, burned with cigarettes, stripped naked in the cold winter, and mutilated. Anna live streams the torture for cult members all over Europe to watch and applaud. A technical accident has leaked the video. Otherwise, the death shows will continue. Old family photos, children laughing by the fireplace, are now just fragments of a real nightmare. When even memories aren't safe. Do you think home is a safe place? Is family a shelter? Are friends a refuge? Society is a place of protection? Is trust unbreakable? You are wrong. This deepest level, where the light no longer shines, is left with only the most terrifying truths. That your killer could be your father. That the hand that leads you could be the hand that pushes you into hell. That the invitation to go out with you could be a death sentence. That the elevator door you step into may never open on the other side, and you will not know until it is too late. Conclusion. When darkness knows no limits, all the laughter, the looks, the promises, now there is only cold emptiness. This final level, there is no exit. There is no redemption. There is no happy ending. There is only darkness. And a quiet question, are you sure you will not be in the next photo? Outro. You have just stepped out of the 7 circles of hell, where every smile can hide a death sentence, where every handshake, every look, every promise can become the final farewell. Today's stories are not for entertainment. They are warnings, carvings on the door that separates us from the abyss beyond. The biggest lesson here is not don't trust anyone, but never blindly believe that you are immune to evil. It can take the face of a loved one. It can wear the clothes of kindness. It can hide in the best photos, in the happiest moments. And when you realize it, it's too late. If there's one thing you should take away from this story, it's this. Always listen to your intuition. Pay attention to the smallest signs. And never assume that darkness only exists in movies. It's right here, all around you. Do you feel a very small sigh echoing behind you? Are you sure that photo on your shelf is really just a memory? Take a closer look. Sometimes darkness leaves very small traces, but only for those brave enough to look directly at it. If you've listened this far, you're one of the few brave enough. Then hit that like button to prove that you've overcome it. Subscribe to our channel to continue our journey deeper, where even darker and more dangerous stories await. Share this video to warn those around you that sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you see, it's what you don't see. Leave a comment. I've looked straight into the darkness, if you're really ready to go with us. Because next time, the story will be darker, colder, and maybe closer than you think. We will meet again, in places that not everyone dares to set foot. Last photos before death. When smiles hide the darkest secrets, darkness recounts.